Welcome to Main Street Minds with your host, Amish Munshi. This is where industry leaders and seasoned pros share their secrets to success beyond limits. Let's dive in.
Hi, Lee. Thanks for coming on a very busy week. Thanks for being on Main Street Minds. This is where we help other technology learners and seasoned entrepreneurs learn about each other, network with each other, and anyone looking to make a career in tech, they get to learn about what does it really mean to be in the tech world. Thanks.
Okay. Well,
So,
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yay, thanks. So yeah, I will open up the floor without any delay, and you can introduce yourself. How did you reach where you are, and where did all the magic start?
Well, I actually started out in software development, believe it or not. This is years ago, and I had a guidance counselor in college. I went to UC Berkeley, and I had a guidance counselor in college
Mm-hmm.
where she had put, while I was waiting for her at her desk, she put a bunch of magazines on her desk,
Mm-hmm.
and they were computer magazines.
Hmm.
We used to have these things called Computer Shopper, PC Magazine, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so, of course, I loved it. I couldn't afford some of those myself. I was a college student, right?
Yeah.
And I would just sit there and flip through them. So I actually liked it that she was late. Took her about 15 minutes. Well, she did the same thing at about 3 different meetings, and she did it on purpose.
Okay.
After the third time, she turned around and she said, you're here to be an author, right? Yeah. I mean, I was studying English literature, and
Yeah.
and she said, but you like these magazines? And I was like, well, yeah, of course I do. In fact, I've learned to program myself, and I
Mm-hmm.
redid my alarm clock, and I did this, that. Anyway, longer story short, she convinced me that I would be better off in a computer science course and program.
Yeah.
So I came right out of school with a focus on software development, doing projects along those lines, doing code.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna create the world's best software program.
Hey,
And
no wonder it's called language, right?
that's right.
The programming language and the language that humans understand. Now, this is the first time I've seen a relationship between them.
Yeah. Well, and I even had a mantra. I still have it today when I coach up others and mentor them, is that computer languages are just a construct of syntax.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And so I say that to make it easier on people to kind of swallow
Yeah.
and understand, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
But at the end of the day, too, just to touch on my background a little bit from a career perspective, I quickly got to a point where I realized that software was dying on the vine. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, I was with a bunch of projects that the product itself was never going to market.
Mm-hmm.
We would, an inordinate amount of them, as in about 2/3 of the work I was doing and the team I was with
Yeah.
and the teams I was with, all of those individuals, the code was never getting out the door.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I ended up feeling the need to
Mm-hmm.
help guide the project differently. So I quickly became a project manager. I
Yeah.
became a go-to team leader developer. I
Mm-hmm.
started getting into the business side of things and the
Mm-hmm.
meetings. I would
Yeah.
sit in, believe it or not, as a software developer, I would start sitting in sales meetings.
Yeah.
Because what I realized was the reason the code wasn't getting out there was there was a disconnect.
Yeah.
There was a disparity between what the business needed
Mm-hmm.
in various ways, right? Or
Yeah.
revenue, or sales, or usability, and all
Mm-hmm.
those things. There was
Mm-hmm.
a disconnect between that and the software teams or the
Mm-hmm.
engineering teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you start to look at my career, then you'll start to see director titles. So we went from project manager to director to manager
Yeah.
to all of these roles. So I've ended up, if you look back at my career, you will see a collection of SVP, GM, CTO, COO, all
Yeah.
of this. It's all along that same path, which is finding a way to get to the marketplace
Mm-hmm.
in a way that's more relevant,
Yeah,
more
yeah,
impactful,
yeah. That
drives
is,
revenue, things
yeah.
of this nature, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and like coming from an engineering background, I kind of I can completely understand that it's easy to be on the pure science side and like develop something and innovate something, but bringing it to the masses and making it a reality is a completely different skill. Like just the
Absolutely.
transition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really the study of my career. If you look down at my CV or resume
Hmm.
today, or look at my LinkedIn profile, or things of that nature, you'll see examples of that. You'll see that do I still code and
Hmm.
script and do all of those things? I still administer big
Yeah.
Linux hosts and
Oh, sweet.
AWS cloud instances and
Nice.
all of these things. So that's
Yeah.
my hands-on work.
Yeah.
What I like doing is being a translation layer
Hmm.
for that activity, those roles, those
Hmm.
products, those initiatives, and business and the
Yeah.
business side of things.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense. Like that is like there was a time when I used to like go back and be like, I want to like I used to be a Linux system administrator and love system administration. I did a little more of identity and access management after that, but I used to like always wanted to go back and tinker around with the system, look at things, what's happening, create my own operating systems, and it's always fun. But when I tried to make that into my career, it was not as much fun, right? So I said, okay, like this is something I like to do. I should do it as a hobby, and my main business or main core of what I do is kind of something that is in the industry that can keep changing. It's a career, right? Career is to
yeah,
be taken professionally.
yes, I hear you. Now, in my career is an example of that. If you go back, one of my first what I'll call big real-time jobs, so
Mhm.
job type job,
Yeah.
beyond just coding, was with a company called B, and they had an operating system. It was the former head of engineering for Apple, named
Hmm.
Jean-Louis Gassier.
Hmm.
He got together with a guy named Steve Sackelman, who
Hmm.
was the who project managed and ran the effort for the first Nintendo. Uh,
Hmm.
so again, dating myself, but they formed a company called B, and
Hmm.
they had an operating system that was better and bested Microsoft Windows.
Hmm.
It bested Apple, and so on and so forth. And what I started doing as a coder, I was like their number 6 to number 12, some number in there, developer for them.
Hmm.
And I loved what they had created. And so I started sending complaints because I'm also a very vocal guy, right?
Yeah.
And I started sending complaints to the operating system team.
Yeah.
And they eventually, after about 6 months of this, of all
Hmm.
these complaints, I was like, you don't even know how to write an API. Let me
Yeah.
tell you how you should have done it, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
right? They brought me in. They had me fly out to corporate, which is Menlo Park in
Hmm.
California, my first time in Silicon Valley. And
Yeah.
they brought me in, and I went through 14 to 15 interviews, 2 days worth of interviews with them.
Hmm.
And I didn't even know I was interviewing. I didn't
Yeah.
even introduce it as an interview. I thought I was just meeting some of the
Yeah.
developers at the
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
And I went through all of that, all through a series of complaints. And at the end of it, the last day, I had a quick lunch with Steve and JLG, the two founders of the company, and they basically turned around and they said, "We want you to be head of engineering."
Hmm.
And
Nice.
I went, "Well, that's interesting."
I should be complaining about things a little more.
Exactly, and that's kind of how I got into leadership in technology, and went from coding into operating systems and into
Yeah.
platforms and into ecosystems. And
Yeah.
there's more of a history there, but that gives you a good example of kind of my background.
Yeah. So would you say you had planned your career or this like or did you just accept things that came your way?
I definitely didn't plan any of this. And at multiple levels. I would say I literally wanted to be a writer.
Yeah.
English literature, and I got exposed in California and at Berkeley to Shakespeare, Marlowe. All I can go down the list. A huge fan of Poe. Huge. I wanted to be. That's what I wanted to do. And my guidance counselor actually did something amazing, which she basically said, "Look, there are only, there's only one Stephen King. There are and making money in writing. Don't you want to?" And I had told her, "I want to live in a castle someday and write. I like to go fishing and things of this nature." And she's like, "You're not on the path for any of that. You're going to end up being, at best, you'll be a teacher. You'll be a writer for an awful long time. There's only so many Stephen King." And what she was doing, she said, "But you already have a passion where there is quite a bit of money and income and so forth." So I didn't start out to be in software at all. I didn't start out to be in leadership at all. It just started to come very natural to me, along the way. And so in that way, I didn't plan on being here. And that actually comes with my whole career. I didn't plan on getting into, on my teams, we created, I'm fortunate, very fortunate, in that we ended up creating some of the first smartphones. Who knew? I was just running an operating system company. And they were bought by Palm.
Sweet. I remember using one of those devices. And I think I still remember it was, I think, called GPRS, where we could do like the IR wireless communication from the laptop to the cell phone, and the cell phone would connect to the network. And oh my God, I think if I could get a paragraph out from that into the network, it was a miracle. But it worked.
No, I remember those days. Well, next thing you know, we were also, because I happened to be there, we were creating some of the first tablets. It was pre-tablet. We actually had a national semiconductor tablet on a refrigerator, so you could order your groceries through it. And this was 10 years before we even had iPads. So, I didn't plan it that way, but next thing you know, I went from Palm to being grabbed by and interviewed by Nokia. And you may recall bandwidth in the United States in particular was really bad. All the bandwidth, because the countries who had already invested in these things, in this type of infrastructure, was in Europe, it was in Asia. And so in this context, getting grabbed, having Nokia entertain me as somebody they should bring in was a huge deal for me. And then handing me the smartphone portfolio was a big deal. At the time, Nokia was shipping 40% of the phones globally. And so you're taking a little guy from Palm, a background in B and some software development, and putting me in that arena at that scale was a lot of learning for me, and very humble pie.
So I know you didn't give credit to the guidance counselor at Berkeley. How much of a role of education and I would say the community and the surrounding has in shaping someone's career?
I would say some, but I wouldn't go so far as any more than a third or half. I think there's, and I've ended up giving quote unquote courses in innovation at Berkeley Haas School of Business. And I've done this in other places in the world as well. And one of the things I would draw as a distinction, like, why would you bring me in? Well, the reason they brought me in is because education is just a part of learning things like markets
Mm-hmm.
So practical experience, firsthand experience, and doing development is the other 2/3 that really matters.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so in that way, you can see examples of this when you go look at the Bill Gates of the world, the Steve
Mm-hmm.
Jobs of the world, the
Yeah.
Zuckerbergs now.
Mm-hmm.
You can go down a list of people who basically their education was a good foundation,
Mm-hmm.
but their business skills and experience really came from practical real world experience and with markets.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like I keep telling most of the people saying, hey, yes, it is important. Definitely don't skip it. It's the core. But at the same time, don't be afraid and shy away from something that you really are passionate about. Balance it out, right? Don't like do one or the other. Both are required.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, a good education is a great foundation.
Yeah.
And one of the things I would say education does give you to a great benefit
Mm-hmm.
is that it helped me in particular be in a learning mode, but a
Sure.
learning mode for my whole life.
Yeah.
To this day, I get in and study AI all the time because I'm in a learning mode.
Yeah, I was about to
Um,
mention that. So going from the initial set of operating systems to mobile computing, are you seeing AI to be the next big thing?
I definitely am. I would equate it. There have been three major eras or movements I've
Hmm.
been exposed to and been a part of, whether or not I chose to be a writer or not. Which is one, the dot-com era.
Hmm.
Um, the second one would be mobility. We didn't
Hmm.
used to call it mobility; it used to be called phones.
Yeah.
Um, and the third is now AI. I see the same writing on the wall. I see the same
Hmm.
criteria. I see the gold mine hunting that happens, the gold rush mindset. Um, and if you take the dot-com era, I remember there's a service in New York called something like 77 Phone or Movie Phone or
Hmm.
something. You may have heard of it. I know others have.
Yeah.
But I remember I pitched Movie Phone as a .com,
Hmm.
and I did that with a guy from a company, an investment company called Alex Brown, and he
Hmm.
basically grabbed me as the token tech bro
Hmm.
um, to come over and explain why the next movie show phone should be .com, should be a
Hmm.
.com.
Yeah.
And I came up with the whole thing and all of this, and then I walked out of the meeting in complete disbelief. I was actually nauseous and dizzy. It wasn't just because there were investors in there; it was multiple
Yeah.
factors. One,
Yeah.
I had been traveling, so it was a little crazy there.
Hmm.
But I went down and I used a payphone and
Yeah.
believe it or not, and I'm that old, and called my girlfriend. I said, "You wouldn't believe what just happened." And she said, "What? Weren't you pitching movie phone?" I said, "Yeah, they actually gave us $7 million
Oh, wow.
in the meet. I was there no longer than 45 minutes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's what kind of money was being thrown around." And
Yeah.
that was the .com era in a nutshell. There, if you know others that have been through that era,
Yeah.
there's crazy amount of money going around in
Yeah.
that way. Well, go back to the three moments or eras I was describing.
Hmm.
I saw it in the .com era, had some personal experience there. In mobility, for sure. And I am fortunate enough to have benefited from that,
Hmm.
sitting up, running a portfolio for Nokia
Hmm.
and helping them manage and throw money around.
Yeah.
Um, and which ended up being a company called Symbian that we open
Mhm.
sourced. It was the
Yeah.
largest open source software effort ever
Yeah.
ever given,
Yeah.
and to this date. Um, and then the third is now I'm looking at AI. I have clients that I interface with
Hmm.
and I advise right now that
Hmm.
have incredible amounts of money being thrown at them,
Yeah.
and so that we live in that kind of era.
Yeah. And is there like a AI bot or any specific aspect of AI that's been like amazing? Like is Like I know a lot of it is amazing, but what is it that caught your attention, and what are you seeing right now that's like, oh wow, this is really cool.
Yeah, I would say the era of AI and the movement on it, the where it got everybody's attention was
Mm-hmm.
what I'll call the language model
Mm-hmm.
phase, which was the introduction was this concept of an LLM, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then getting APIs, so getting access to those LLMs and
Yeah.
models and so forth. That's where we've been talking. We're now in a second era, I would describe it
Mm-hmm.
as, and this really is interesting to me, or
Mm-hmm.
more interesting.
Yeah.
Wasn't just that before I could do something in a language model,
Mm-hmm.
or that there was a way to do X or Y.
Mm-hmm.
We're now in the reasoning era. It's
Mm-hmm.
about inference and reasoning, and
Mm-hmm.
now we're talking. We're talking things through agentics, reasoning. There are now models around this. So you take DeepSeek,
Mm-hmm.
and DeepSeek's relevance right now versus a Gemini from Google
Mm-hmm.
or others, or what Microsoft is doing with their Copilot products
Mm-hmm.
or versions. Well, DeepSeek's different. Why? Reasoning.
Yeah.
It's not. They've come up. They have foisted upon in a very open and transparent way
Mm-hmm.
all things I enjoy most and am fascinated by.
Yeah.
Um, but they've done it more cost effectively.
Mm-hmm.
They've done it more efficiently. They've
Mm-hmm.
done it quickly.
Yeah.
It's open source.
Yeah.
They've also open sourced it, and what's behind a lot of that is the reasoning aspect of it, how it reasons and how it grows
Mm-hmm.
itself as
Yeah.
an artificial intelligence is
Yeah.
very unique. And so now I've been studying a lot of that and the agentics, or how we can interface with it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm very interested in how we will do things with AI,
Mm-hmm.
not through an API, not
Mm-hmm.
through a prompt,
Yeah.
not through a chat window.
Yeah.
Um, I like the very human aspect of things, hence why I liked mobile to
Yeah.
begin with, or why I
Exactly.
like .coms to begin with. Um, the reason I liked those things was how it influences our everyday lives.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we're at that era of when you add on top of reasoning, we'll go through the reasoning era, and then there'll be a third era of agentics, and it will be very human interfaces
Mm-hmm.
with AI. You won't have a search engine.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have something else entirely that
Yeah.
will be an interface into tools that have access to search engines and
Yeah.
language models and a
Yeah.
level of reasoning that is beyond the types of tools we use today. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's really exciting. You hopefully can see that I'm a little bit passionate and interested in
Sure.
that.
And what is it? What is the third level called? Genetics or
Agentics. Yeah,
Agentics? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely like to learn a little bit more about that. I just met somebody yesterday and they said they are working on a AI model where we can communicate with our pets in a language that they will understand. And I was like, yeah, that would be cool. But then with the, with the mention of reasoning that you mentioned, I was like, what if the AI intentionally reasons something that I didn't want to communicate with my dog? That scares me. It's like, hey dog, go and sleep. I'm like, no, let's go for a walk. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Well, and I would throw out there, I hear you loud and clear, and I get this a lot when I talk to people and I give them advice and so forth about AI. Um, one of the first things you'll see out there as a headline is that, well, because of AI, it's going to take everybody's jobs,
Mm-hmm.
um, or this type of thing. I don't believe that. And the reason I don't believe it, one, I've kind of been around the block a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more than some other
Yeah.
people out there. But AI is a tool. It's a
Mm-hmm.
tool for your toolbox. And
Yeah.
so if somebody comes up with a new kind of wrench,
Mm-hmm.
well, I want to know about it and I might
Yeah.
want to use it. But
Yeah.
the wrench doesn't build the car for you.
Mm-hmm.
The hammer doesn't build the house for you.
Yeah. It just
You
makes it
still
easier.
need all the talent. You still need a blueprint.
Yeah.
You still need to understand how combustion works.
Mm-hmm.
You still need gas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why I coach people up and kind of advise people in a certain way that that's not what I would be worried about AI. I would be worried about how does it alter, as you said, how does it alter my voice?
Yeah.
Does it speak on my behalf?
Yeah.
Now that's interesting, and
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be a society thing, a culture thing, and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. But I think AI is just a very powerful tool that we're just now learning the benefits of.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So how is your day to day looking like right now? Like with Edelai and I love the website that you have. It's like really concise and very it was like very easy to like relate to the website. But like how does your current role what does it look like right now?
Yeah, and thank you for the kind comments. So Edelai is an agency, Edelai.com. It's an agency I started 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was doing is I was doing some tech work as an advisor, a tech advisor, to other companies.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did, I said, well, you know what I really like? I like product. I like bringing products to market. I
Mm-hmm.
like change the world mindsets. It was
Yeah.
very fulfilling for me. And it turns out I had a lot of background there. I learned the hard way. I didn't plan this, but ended up there. When I left Nokia, I ended up at advising a company. A board member asked me to go in and spend a few days learning about irrigation. And at first I was like, why in the world would you think I know how to do that? I don't. I mean, but I'm always been in a learning mode. I
Mm-hmm.
was very curious. And so I went and studied, I went and scrutinized and studied with a little company called ET Water.
Mm-hmm.
And what ET stands for is envirotranspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out all irrigation, I learned this. So here's my coding engineering mindset
Mm-hmm.
looking at a problem, right? And what I learned is that irrigation works off of clocks. They call them clocks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what they are timers. They're
Okay.
just little clocks. You set your sprinkler,
Yeah.
right? And you
Yeah.
just do that at scale, and well,
Mm.
okay, you got a bunch of clocks.
Yeah.
Well, what we did is come up with a way to actually use a cloud service
Mm-hmm.
that used the concept of envirotranspiration instead
Mm-hmm.
of a clock. So
Mm-hmm.
the translation was, in a nutshell, we could save 50 to 60% of the water being used in
Mm-hmm.
drought-stricken California.
Mm-hmm.
We could shut off sprinklers automatically.
Mm-hmm.
We could only put the water down that the plant or grass needed
Mm-hmm.
or the tree needed.
Yeah.
And we did that through 17 little facets of an algorithm
Mm-hmm.
up there in a cloud. Well, we would even just send out, we learned how to do this. We could just send product to people. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, you wouldn't buy your sprinkler. We'd just send you one. And you'd
Mm-hmm.
sign up for our service, pay $20 a month,
Yeah.
and you would save 50 to 60% of your water bill.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Boom. Smart irrigation is what we
Wow.
ended up calling it. And at the heart of that was mobility.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing we did with phones, we called them internet appliances,
Yeah.
and they ran on a mobile network. We knew
Mm-hmm.
how to do all that, my team and I did. And so I ended up creating a whole solution or system for it. So what I realized doing when I started Edelai, back to your
Mm-hmm.
question, what I started to realize was I could use my experiences,
Mm-hmm.
my understanding of how markets work and products work and this technology works
Mm-hmm.
in multiple ways,
Mm-hmm.
in ways well beyond. So today, if you look at Edelai clients,
Mm-hmm.
um, we deal with real estate agencies,
Mm-hmm.
homeowners associations are some of our clients.
Interesting.
I'm running a data ascension startup with another colleague of mine.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing outdoor gear.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing, again, these are whole different facets. We're working with manufacturers.
Yeah.
Those are the clients of Edeli, because
Mm-hmm.
these days marketing is technology. And if you have that experience and background of how to apply your understanding and experience in
Mm-hmm.
these unique ways,
Mm-hmm.
you also have an ability to help people differentiate,
Mm-hmm.
help people grow revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And we now run 2/3 of our work are running campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
So campaigns with products that are highly differentiated,
Yeah.
with conversions that are 3x what they are for other companies and outfits.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've built a whole business in that with Edeli.
That's amazing. So that, like, as you rightly said, I think technology, it plays such an important role, and we have like and the background you have is like really amazing, right? The I still think the most important part of marketing is the copywriting, and having a background in actually writing and the passion of writing. I think that does translate into like doing something that's extremely valuable, and then the technology just helps to push it out to the right people, and reaching out and actually doing that conversion, right? The outreach is the technology.
Yes, no, absolutely. And again, I'm a friend of copyrights as well, but I've
Hmm.
also seen copywriting misused, intellectual property misuse, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things you'll notice about Edeli is we actually don't copyright our material or pages.
Hmm.
We also open source any code we create and or just give it away
Yeah.
to people. And
Yeah.
so all the images at Edeli, all it is an open attribution model.
Hmm.
So we use the Frontier Foundation approach
Hmm.
and they've come up with a global way of recognizing intellectual property
Hmm.
and doing an attribution model. And
Hmm.
so that's closer to my heart in terms of being a huge proponent of open source software and these types of things.
Makes sense. Yeah. So let's say somebody's deciding, like they're still in college, in graduate college or undergrad, they're studying technology. What would you recommend them to be doing right now? Like how should they approach a technology career?
Well, I think AI, of course, would be there.
Mm-hmm.
I would say secondarily, beyond just the technical fundamentals. So, of course, do your programming languages.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned my whole life there's a methodology to programming and coding that
Mm-hmm.
carried over to me, and so those are fundamentals. But get into AI, then get into reasoning, not
Mm-hmm.
just the models themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Get into agentics
Yeah.
and or the corollary to that.
Mm-hmm.
So how do people interface with it? They won't be using prompts. Let me
Mm-hmm.
put it that way.
Yeah.
And so agentics would be and then secondarily, I would say learn the business side. And by business side, from my point of view, is marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those things would make you a more well-rounded
Mm-hmm.
person out there. And also, I would say, don't do work studies on campus. Don't
Mm-hmm.
do work out there as an intern and elsewhere. Do it out in the field. Do it in the
Okay.
marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Do it in because half the reason I've ever given a speech, internationally or otherwise, of course, there's a background in coding and a little bit of things on OOD and
Mm-hmm.
agile principles and things of that nature. But at the core of it is because I had a level of practical experience they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't get in the university,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that had a value to them. I've sat in classrooms or halls, they call them, with 600, 1,200 people
Mm-hmm.
come in. Not this isn't a commercial for me. They didn't come
Yeah.
in to actually hear me. They
Mm-hmm.
came in to hear from about my experience.
Mm-hmm.
They came in to hear about work I had done with companies,
Mm-hmm.
partners all over the world and in
Yeah.
different places and different markets.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something I would give as a piece of advice to people is
Mm-hmm.
take every single opportunity you can.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just be on campus.
Mm-hmm.
Get out there and apply for your internships out at companies and businesses and with
Mm-hmm.
friends, colleagues, and so forth, because you're going to get more value from
Mm-hmm.
that experience than about
Yeah.
any.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the benefit of being in on the private kind of more on the capitalist economy or private sector, right? If something is going to work, there is enough money available to ensure like that things works. And if something is not working, we don't just keep keep doing it over and over again. There is somebody asking, saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" Right?
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's one of the more efficient ways of doing things. So, and at the same time, if you're trying to do, it's amazing how all of this materializes. And if you're doing something useful, it's still the world. It's still a good place. I'm an overly opportunist, not an opportunistic, but an optimistic person, saying,
Yeah.
like I always think there is always so much good in this world that's happening. We just have to ignore. Like just let go of all the negative thing that's happened. There's just like the nuclear fusion thing that happened last year. That was amazing. Like there is just
Yeah.
so much good things happening in the world.
Yeah, and I've made a rule to myself, kind of a mantra, about 10 years ago. It was right after I left Nokia, where I
Mm-hmm.
decided I'm going to do work for things and spend my time and effort in a net positive way,
Mm-hmm.
an optimistic way. And
Yeah.
you can translate that a lot of different ways. That today for me, I work with a group called Elder Wisdom Circle.
Mm-hmm.
And what the Elder Wisdom Circle does, because it is one, it's a net positive contribution thing. I
Mm-hmm.
volunteer and I'm now vice chair of the board of a team of people who take the input from advice seekers. So
Mm-hmm.
people who may have had a trouble in their home life,
Mm-hmm.
people who may be in a stricken environment
Mm-hmm.
in a culture elsewhere in the world. They may be under dictatorship.
Mm-hmm.
They may be starving.
Yeah.
But you can go down a list of people who need advice in this
Mm-hmm.
world, and we pair them with an elder and a team, and we help them with the support and perspectives more than anything. It's an empathy and a perspective and a set of tools that they don't have access to, or they wouldn't be reaching out for advice.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
do that for them. And again, I think there's something to be said for, back to my mantra of 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
is be doing things in a healthy way in your life that have a net positive contribution.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
spend the time and effort and energy in that direction, and you'll also be better off.
Oh yeah.
Not just helping other people, you'll be in a better position, a more balanced and healthy
Mm-hmm.
position yourself.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah, that's amazing. I did look up Elder Wisdom Circle, and I was keen on learning more about it. So thanks for sharing that.
You bet. You bet.
Cool. So what's the best way for somebody to reach out to you?
Well, of course, things like LinkedIn and so forth. You can just email me at Edeli or lee@edeli.com.
Okay.
It's probably a quick and easy way to do it. And
Okay.
I interface with people all over my LinkedIn profile. So you
Sure.
can just go leemwilliams@linkedin.com and you'll see my ugly mug with the glasses sitting right there.
Yeah.
And see my background and some of the things we've talked about. That and the email address would be a great way to reach out. And I probably either mentor, coach up, or take questions and so forth from people probably 6-10 times a week now.
Oh,
And
sweet.
so I feel very fortunate to be doing that. But my point is, I'll get back to you too. As
Yeah.
long as you're not just there to sell me something,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to help and lend some of my experience.
Cool. That's amazing. Like, I'm really glad you're able to like contribute effectively and in a quantifiable way, right? Like saying, okay, you are able to do this. Like many people say, yeah, they want to do it, but when an opportunity comes, that's when they might do it. But I think you are able to like go back and quantify, saying you are able to actually impact lives of 3 to 5 people a week, right? That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just before we conclude, any final words of thoughts that you would like to share with the audience?
Well, I would say the one takeaway is simply there's a lot of benefit in being in a learning mode,
Mm-hmm.
doing that in your career
Mm-hmm.
and in your whole life. So being in that learning mode can have a lot of positive benefits that will surprise you.
Yeah.
And that's something I would pass on. Guidance, which is typical that I would throw out there, which is be open-minded,
Mm-hmm.
don't be biased
Mm-hmm.
individual, don't do things just for money. Those are
Yeah.
all very healthy things as well. But
Mm-hmm.
being in a learning mode
Mm-hmm.
will get you there, your whole life
Mm-hmm.
and in multiple aspects of your career, so much so that it will surprise you.
Yeah.
So being in that mode is the one thing I would emphasize.
Sweet. That's extremely valuable. Thanks, Lee. Thanks for taking the time on a busy week and coming on a podcast on a very short notice. Thanks for being here, and we really are privileged to have you on this show.
And
Thanks.
thank you very much. It was great to take some time with you. I appreciate it.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Main Street Minds. Want to share your journey with our audience? Head over to mainstreetmindspodcast.com/guest to apply.